Good evening, everyone. It is great to be with you. My name is Dave Bambry. I have the honor of being the president of your University of Illinois Alumni Association. It's absolutely wonderful to be with you tonight. I appreciate you joining us on a very special and timely topic. We're going to get into everything Illinois athletics here in just a few moments. But again, really appreciate you joining us for our University of Illinois Alumni Association speaker series. I want to just take a few moments to talk about some great things happening at your alumni association before we jump in with Josh here. First and foremost, we've got homecoming coming up next week. So that is a week-long celebration. Can't be more excited about it. The weather looks absolutely great. We hope you can join us in Champaign next week. We've got a week full of events, full schedule. We actually start that this coming Sunday with our homecoming 5K and fountain dyeing. So that starts at the quad and ends at Alice Campbell Alumni Center. We dye the fountain orange that day, and that kind of really kicks off homecoming week. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for that. And then as we step through the week, we have our Alumni Awards Gala, where we'll honor some of our most prestigious and accomplished alumni. We bring those folks back to campus and really enjoy a few days with them. Friday brings the homecoming parade. That'll take place at 5:30 p.m., kind of wraps around Memorial Stadium there, and is obviously an annual tradition that goes back a long way. So looking forward to that on Friday evening. That'll also lead us right into a pep rally that night to get us ready for the weekend. And obviously we've got a big game that Saturday as well against Central Michigan, and we'll kick off at 11 a.m. that morning. So we'll fire the girls up a little early that day and be ready to go, I'm sure. So look forward to homecoming, look forward to welcoming you all back to campus. If you can't join us back in Champaign, certainly stay tuned. We'll have a lot going on social media to make you feel like you're here as well. Two more things I just want to mention very briefly. The first is Illini Link, which is our online networking and mentorship platform brought to you by the Alumni Association. That's a great way to be involved, whether you're a student or a young alum that's looking to kind of get to that next step in your career or maybe land that first job, or you're somebody that's been in the field for a long time and is looking for a way to give back. Illini Link is a great spot to do that. So definitely check that out on our website. We have over 12,000 users, all Illinois alumni, current students, and faculty and staff are a part of that platform. So it's really growing by the day and something that we think is a great offering to our alumni. Lastly, just want to mention our membership program. We brought back our annual membership program a couple of years ago. It's got a lot of great benefits to it. One of those being discounts on homecoming football tickets. I think there's a discount at the Atkins golf course as well. So many great benefits to that. And that's also something that you can find all kind of information about on our website at UIAA.org. So again, just want to mention those pieces. I'm sure we have a lot of Life members on the call as well. I know we always do as a part of our speaker series. Please know if you're a Life member, you get all of those current benefits available to you. We appreciate that investment you've made in your Life membership, and we certainly want to honor that with all of our current suite of benefits. But let's get to why we're here this evening. That's to talk to Josh Whitman, Director of Athletics here at Illinois. Josh is in his 9th year at the helm of the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics, and he's the university's 14th permanent Director of Athletics in its history. He also owns the 3rd longest tenure among current Big Ten athletic directors, and he's certainly coming off a successful 2023-2024 season. We'll get into that here a little more in just a minute. But as many of you know, Josh is a former Illini football player and letter winner, 2-time Illinois graduate, graduated from Geese, and also received a JD from the College of Law, and has truly been a leader in the face of many transformational landscape changes in the world of athletics, both within the NCAA and obviously here at Illinois and in the Big Ten as well. With that, I'll welcome Josh. Josh, thanks so much for being with us. I'm sure your schedule is absolutely crazy this time of year, even compared to the normal craziness you have. So again, really appreciate you taking the time out. You're always so generous with your time with the Alumni Association, and can't thank you enough for being here.
Thanks, David, and great to have everybody with us today. Thanks for all your support and passion for the university, and really looking forward to a great conversation today.
Absolutely. So I think the setup for today, if you've joined us for speaker series in the past, we usually have a few slides and an intro, but we thought today it would be the best format to just have more of a conversation, more of a back and forth with Josh and myself, making sure we can get to a lot of questions. I have a few to start us off, but I certainly would encourage you all to submit questions through that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That's something you'll see that will allow you to submit questions. Please feel free to do that at any point. I'll be reading those off here in just a little while. We'll get to as many of those as possible in the hour ahead, but let me jump in with a couple of questions that I have, and we'll go ahead and start from there. Josh, I know we're obviously getting to the fall season, getting to 2024, 2025. But before we kind of look ahead and get to the present tense, let's take just a moment and maybe look back at 2023, 2024. First, congratulations on an absolutely great season. Teams won 4 Big Ten titles. Men's basketball obviously made one of its deepest runs in a long time, getting to an Elite Eight. Women's basketball won the inaugural WBIT tournament, which was just a great time and a lot of fun to watch that journey. So from your seat, how do you reflect on the past year, and what are your thoughts on what 2023, 2024 brought for us?
It was a great year, and I give so much kudos to our staff, to our coaches, to our student athletes. We have, coming out of COVID, we put together a series of what we call strategic priorities. We felt like COVID would prove to be sort of this breaking point in history, and that there would be pre-COVID and post-COVID in college athletics. And it looks like over the last 4 or 5 years, I know we'll get into some of these changes, but that certainly has proven to be true, and felt like we needed a new roadmap, a new set of guidance to help direct our decision making and put us in a better position to compete going forward. Those strategic priorities really focused on winning championships, and what we've done here historically. We won a lot of games. We've competed well during the regular season, and sometimes as we've gotten into the postseason, we haven't had the same success. And so we really wanted to be upfront and direct with our people about expectations around championships. And now, a few years later, we're really starting to see that manifest itself. And this last year, I think, was the best example. And to be able to win 4 Big Ten titles is the most we've won in a single year since 2015. To be able to win the golf regional with our men's team out in California, to be able to, as you mentioned, win the inaugural WBIT, to advance to the Elite Eight with our men's basketball team. We just started to realize the results of what has been a years-long process, and everybody has had a hand in that. It's the beauty of what we do in college athletics is there's an opportunity for many hands to make lighter work, and we're fortunate here in that a lot of folks on the call, I'm sure, have been involved in our program, and we're grateful for that. And hopefully everybody takes a lot of pride as we start to experience greater and greater levels of success, and knowing that they played a part in helping us get to that point. And so it was certainly, there's a difference. And when we talk with our staff about this, it's fine to be happy, but we can never allow ourselves to become satisfied. And so we have been very diligent in our messaging and in our internal conversations. Let's celebrate the success that we've had, but let's never confuse those celebrations for satisfaction. And we have a lot more work in front of us. We have a lot more progress to continue to make, and we're continuing to look for ways to try and push that bar higher every single day.
Absolutely. So kind of bringing us up to present day, I've had the opportunity to hear you speak a number of times. One of those pieces that I hear you talk about often is packing Memorial Stadium. One of the great pieces of news I saw this week is we're going to have that be a reality. We saw the Kansas game got sold out. That's absolutely wonderful. I'm so excited to be a part of that here on Saturday. I think last week showed a lot of potential with the team, obviously taking that first step in their journey for the season. You spend a lot of time with the football team. What are you most excited about this year? What are some things that you think we can expect that might be different this year with this team?
I have just such tremendous confidence in Brett Bielema, our coaching staff, and our student athletes in the work that they've put in to put us in a position to be competitive. You look at what's happened the last 3 years, and we've really been one win each season away from doing something that we haven't done here in a really long time. And two of those years would have been going to a bowl game. We could have been in 3 consecutive games. And then that second year, of course, we were just a whisker away from competing in the Big Ten championship game, representing the Western Division. And so I feel really confident in the steps that we've taken. And now we have a really tough schedule in front of us, but I think we've got an experienced group. We've got a group that understands Coach B's expectations. They understand his approach. And it's been really rewarding to see our fans respond. A year ago, we had more than 10,000 new season ticket holders who purchased tickets and were part of the Illinois football experience, coming off of our January bowl game in the Reliant Quest Bowl the season before. And now this year, our season tickets have climbed even higher. And what we've learned is that if we want to sell out consistently, that season ticket base has to be at a certain level, knowing that we can only move so many single game tickets in the allotted time that we have. And so as that season ticket base has grown, and we want to see it continue to grow in the years ahead, that puts us in a position now to experience some of these sellouts, and we understand what's on the line for us on Saturday night. I think we're going to have a lot of people in the building who either haven't been in there before or maybe haven't been for some time, and it's incumbent on us to give them a good show on the field. But then also we need to make sure that we're doing a lot of things off the field to enhance that experience. And we put a tremendous amount of energy and resources into that effort here over the last couple of years. We've built an entirely new department within the athletic program that focuses on the fan experience. We've done a lot to try and augment the tailgating environment, to try and connect the fans to our players, to our coaches. And so we want to make sure that experience is at the top of the line from the time our fans leave their garages until they come back to their homes after the game. And so hopefully they're experiencing that from their first interaction with our parking attendants. They're having a chance in our tailgating lots to experience more of the things that are out there, and including the Illini walk, the marching Illini, some of the things that we do on the steps of the stadium leading up to the game itself. And then once we get in the stadium, we've really worked on the in-game environment. We've added some new elements. We have now the Red Grange race, which I know a lot of our fans have come to enjoy. We have added in an old tradition. The Orange and Blues brothers made a reappearance last weekend in the tailgating lots, and we expect that will continue. We're doing a lot with our concessions, our entry points, trying to just make things clearer, trying to make sure they're appropriately staffed. And we want to do more with the music, the video board, the things that are happening throughout the game to really add to that environment. And this past weekend, just as one last example, we really built out the pregame introductions for our team. So we did some things that, to our knowledge, nobody else in college football is doing. We adopted more of a pro-style introduction. We do a lot with fireworks, with smoke, but we're now introducing individual players, which allows them to really show some of their personality in a way that you don't see in football a lot, just because of the gear and the helmets and everything. And I think adds a layer of energy to the environment just because of the enthusiasm that they bring to those moments. And so just a few little snippets there of things that I think our fans will see on Saturday. And again, knowing that many of the folks on the call will be there with us, we're grateful for the support, and just think this is really a preview of things to come in terms of where this program is headed.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And I had a chance to be at the game last week, like I mentioned, and seeing the player introductions was a lot of fun. I think it was a nice chance to see some of the folks we already knew and get to know some of the newer players. So that was a great addition, I thought, and kind of a really cool surprise as I was getting into the stadium there. So switching gears a little bit here, this is something that I would be hard pressed to think you don't think about or talk about every single day. So I apologize if I'm breaking your streak of not talking about this today yet, but that's NIL, something that is top of mind and seems to be changing, almost weekly here at this point in time. National news obviously is covering this at a high level. It's been a lot of media around the House court case, potential settlement that would, allow paying NIL money directly from schools to student athletes permissible. Very complex issues, and I think a lot of information out there, some of which is, I think a little closer to the correct information than others. A lot of thoughts about it, but can you just talk a little bit about what that means, what the latest is nationally, and maybe more specifically what it means for Illinois athletics?
Name, image, likeness is probably a long overdue change for college athletics, and we're now several years into this experience. It has already gone through several evolutions of the NIL paradigm. At its very core, the essence of NIL is it is outside money for outside work. And so what we cannot do is pay student athletes to play football or to play basketball at the University of Illinois. That's pay for play, which is still prohibited by the NCAA's rules. What can happen now is that student athletes can be paid by a third party to engage in activities that are not playing sports at the University of Illinois. And so that's become a focal point for programs like ours to try and capitalize on as we try and attract the most talented student athletes to Champaign-Urbana. Excuse me. There are really two broad pieces to NIL. One is what I would refer to as true NIL, which are commercial arm's length market rate transactions between a third party and a student athlete for appearances, endorsements. You think about what Caitlin Clark is doing right now with State Farm. You think about what Tiger Woods has done historically with Nike. You think about what Michael Jordan used to do with Gatorade. And those are traditional NIL engagements. If somebody wanted to pay a student athlete to attend their daughter's birthday party, that would be a traditional NIL engagement. So that's one bucket, and really where NIL was intended to benefit our student athletes. The other bucket that has developed quite unintentionally, but probably somewhat predictably, has been what we refer to as competitive NIL. And so we are now seeing the creation of organizations. In our parlance, they're referred to as collectives that aggregate donor resources and then create NIL opportunities for student athletes at a particular institution. And so here at the University of Illinois, our collective is referred to as ICON. ICON was founded by a former fundraiser in our athletics program, a woman named Kathleen Knight. Kathleen was a swimmer for us and left DIA to start ICON, and now has been incredibly instrumental in the success of our program. And so her group is responsible for going out and identifying folks who are interested in supporting our student athletes, assembling those resources, and then ultimately creating opportunities for our student athletes to earn those dollars through primarily appearances in the community. So they'll go out, they'll make appearances at hospitals, at schools, at community service centers. And it really has been a win-win for everybody involved. Our student athletes, in some cases, are staying enrolled longer as opposed to potentially turning pro, which in some cases has allowed them to graduate, complete their University of Illinois degrees. And in other cases has allowed them simply to advance their education. Also allows, of course, our community to benefit from greater engagement from our student athletes, the young people in particular, who are getting the opportunity to have exposure and time with our student athletes. And then ultimately, of course, it helps our teams. We get the benefit of having our student athletes here longer. And so it's been a challenging environment in some ways, but we really encouraged our staff, our student athletes, to see it as an opportunity. And we have leaned in very much into this space. We see it as a chance for our program to move itself within the pecking order of college athletics. in a way that really has never been presented in history. And so we have been aggressive in the NIL space. And we expect that evolution will continue. There are some other changes coming that I know we'll talk about in this conversation that will potentially have some implications for the NIL landscape, but will still allow us to ultimately direct resources into the hands of our student athletes who have earned that for all their hard work on behalf of the institution.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump into a few of our attendee questions. We've got a couple follow-ups on the NIL piece, which I think are great add-ons to this. Had a question come in talking about with the NIL money available to athletes, where does that leave scholarships in the future? You know, how does that play in? Do they become a thing of the past is the question that's being asked.
Scholarships are a critical part of college athletics at this level. I don't see that changing. I think one of the beauties of Division I athletics, and I can say this having come from Division III, in a Division III environment, you're prohibited from providing athletics-based scholarships. In Division I, the athletics-based scholarship is the crux of our relationship with the student athletes. We're opening doors and making an education at a place like the University of Illinois available to dozens, if not hundreds, of student athletes who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity. And so I don't see that changing. The NIL environment has become very lucrative for a small number of student athletes, but the reality is that most of our student athletes will not benefit, at least not benefit significantly in the NIL world. And so the scholarship will remain very central to their decision-making process and to unlocking the doors to come to a place like the University of Illinois. If you think about professional athletics, there are very few football players, basketball players who you see promoting products on television, in magazines, online. The reality is that the NIL world, when you get into the true NIL space, is a pretty limited environment, and companies are making ROI decisions about where they're going to see some return on those investments. And it's a pretty limited space in the professional environment, and it ultimately, I think, will prove to be a pretty limited space in the collegiate environment as well. And so the scholarships will remain primary for the vast majority of our student athletes.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of summarize a couple of other questions here. We've, like I mentioned, we've got a lot coming in about NIL. Can you talk about balancing academics with athletic standards? Obviously, the goal is to win championships, but these are student athletes, so balancing the academic side to that. And we had another question come in, you know, with NIL added on top of all of this, right? A student athlete's schedule is already incredibly challenging. So are there pieces you all have put in place to help them with NIL, to help them, you know, continue to be successful with all they have going on, being a student athlete here at Illinois?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. I think that our student athletes, and we emphasize this to them, their priorities have to be school and then sports and then whatever comes next after that. And we have to remember that the NIL opportunities are elective. Nobody's forcing them to engage in the NIL landscape. Now, we understand why they would want to. And the reality is that our student athletes have time. You know, they are very adept at managing their time, and they are able to find those spaces where they need it to engage in those activities. But we've got a great staff of support people who work with our student athletes in a lot of their extracurricular activities, certainly that support them on the academic side, but that also help them from a personal development perspective, whether it's, you know, career counseling, resume development, financial management, and certainly in the NIL space as well. And so I'm comfortable that they're not taking on more than they can chew. And the reality is they've proven that they can chew a lot, because they're very busy as part of our program. But The one thing that they will learn being a student athlete at Illinois is they're going to learn how to manage time, and they're going to learn how to prioritize time. And I'm confident that this is yet another layer, and I think it's a great learning experience for our student athletes. It opens a door for them and allows them to be entrepreneurial in a way that the rules didn't permit previously. And I think that's ultimately very beneficial. To your first question, David, I think what you're going to see over the next number of years is a redefining of college athletics. And I think you're going to see a phase out of the term amateurism. I think that word has become a bit antiquated in its use in college sports. The reality is that concept has become a bit of a moving target and an evolving definition over the last 10 to 20 years. We continue to kind of hang our hat on that. But if we've learned anything through some of these recent court cases and some of the changes in the ecosystem of college athletics, it's that we have to find a different way to define what we do. And it's not necessarily that our student athletes are not compensated for their time. I think the distinguishing factor between college athletics and professional athletics as we go forward will increasingly be our athletes are also students. And so I think if anything, we're going to see a reinforcement of the educational mission of college athletics. I think you're going to see a recommitment to the fact that our student athletes are here enrolled full-time as students, progressing toward meaningful degrees and ultimately advancing their education and their life preparation through their time on our campus. And so I'm very bullish that there are some who would suggest that college athletics may become a licensed entity, and that essentially the student athletes are going to become employees the same as I am and David is. I don't see that happening. I don't think that the academic center of the mission here for our student athletes will ever go away. I do think there's a world where they could become employees, but I don't think those two things have to be mutually exclusive. And the reality is the university employs thousands of students who work in the dining halls and the residence halls and the fitness centers, the libraries. They certainly could employ athletes as well and still expect them to be students at the same time.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit here. I think we could go for 4 hours on NIL alone, and maybe we'll do that at some point. But let's switch gears a little bit here tonight. The Big Ten Conference obviously has expanded, right? It's now 18 teams, first season really that we're embarking on that with our West Coast members competing in the league. Excuse me. How has this impacted Illinois teams, and what has the onboarding been like for those teams at a conference level?
The onboarding has been intense and ongoing, and fortunately, we have a great staff at the Big Ten. We have great staffs on our respective campuses, and so there's been tremendous collaboration that has been occurring since immediately after those decisions were made to make sure that we try and create the most seamless onboarding that we can for our new members. I think that we do need to understand that it's likely to be an iterative process. I don't know that exactly how we schedule this year will be how we're scheduling in 3 years. I fully expect that we will continue to observe and adapt as we move through this and learn how to do things even more efficiently. But the reality is when you pull back the curtain and look carefully at what our teams have been doing historically, almost every one of our sports is routinely taking extended trips as part of their non-conference scheduling. And so whether you're in track or soccer or any of our other sports, they are taking extended trips right now. Our women's soccer team is playing as we speak in Athens, Georgia. That is commonplace for us. And so I think if there's a misunderstanding, there's this idea that our teams have been competing regionally and now all of a sudden they're competing nationally. The reality is as a Big Ten program, the University of Illinois has been competing nationally for a long time. And so we may now be replacing some of those non-conference contests with what will now be conference contests. But the burden or the load on our student athletes that will be incremental above and beyond what they've experienced previously, I think will be very marginal at best. And I give the Big Ten a lot of credit because for us, our teams will be traveling west only once per year. And so any one of our sport programs, they won't make 4 trips. They won't travel to Oregon, come home, go to Washington, come home, go to USC, come home. They will go to the Pacific Northwest and play Oregon on a Thursday and Washington on a Sunday, and then they'll come home. They'll go to Los Angeles and play UCLA on a Thursday and USC on a Sunday, and then come home. And they'll only do one of those trips in a year. The opposite location will come to our place. And so the Big Ten's been very thoughtful in how it's approached it. And I know our student athletes are excited. This is a great opportunity for the Big Ten to deepen its bench. We've become a better conference with the addition of these new schools. And we talk with our student athletes about this. When they come to a place like Illinois, they are signaling to the rest of the world that they are amongst the best in the world at what they do. And by virtue of that, they have an appetite to compete against others who are the best in the world as well. And so for our student athletes, the chance to compete against 4 brands like USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, with their history, their tradition, that's exciting for our athletes. They don't shy away from that competition. They relish that. And so for them to be able to go to those places and compete at that level is something that I know motivates them and excites all of us.
Absolutely. So, Josh, you mentioned the women's soccer team being on the road right now. We had a question come in about women's athletics in general. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, obviously at a professional level now, but obviously during their last seasons in college, we saw this really incredible rise in women's sports and the viewership around women's sports. It's been great for a long time, but really the viewership and the notoriety that it's getting. We saw Shauna Green have great success last year. We've seen women's volleyball be very successful in a number of other sports. Can you just maybe speak for a moment about, women's athletics here at Illinois, and if we're kind of playing into that rise, helping to promote those programs at an even higher level as we step forward here?
It's a great question, and appreciate that observation. It's absolutely spot on. We are seeing an acceleration in the popularity and the visibility of women's sports that really is unrivaled in our history. And of course, we just a few years back celebrated the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and it's hard to find a law that has had a more profound impact on a segment of our population than Title IX has had on opportunities for girls and women across our country to participate in sports at the lowest levels and now at the collegiate and even the professional levels. And it's been exciting just to see some of that start to really amplify itself in terms of the volleyball event that we saw at Nebraska last year, the women's basketball event that we saw at Iowa last year, the fact that the women's national championship game outdrew the men's national championship game by more than 4 million viewers. It speaks volumes about the status of women's sports in this country. And here at the University of Illinois, we are absolutely committed to riding that wave and contributing to being a part of that growing interest in women's sports, and certainly need to look no further than what's happening with our women's basketball program and Shauna Green. The resurgence of that team over the last 2 years after truly 2 decades of pretty challenging results has been so encouraging. And today, for those of you who follow, we signed we identified a recruit who will come here. Again, can't speak publicly about these recruits until they actually sign, but one of the top players in the country, one of the top players in this state, the kind of player that we haven't attracted to our program in a really, really long time. I think that speaks volumes about what we're experiencing with our women's basketball team. Last year, in the last 2 years, we've won some Big Ten titles in women's sports that we haven't in a long time. We captured the track and field championship last year with Petros Kiprianou, and we saw a real growth in our women's track program, competing at a national level. I had breakfast with him this morning. We're anticipating an even stronger performance from that group as we head into this year. Our women's golf team won the first Big Ten championship in school history 2 years ago now, and thought that was, again, really a demonstration of how far that program has come. Our volleyball program has been exceptional under head coach Chris Thomas. Made a Final Four appearance early in his tenure, has been in the Sweet 16 3 times. Had our home opener the other night against a good Illinois State team and had another nice crowd there. And so we're continuing to try and plant seeds with our fans, with the young girls who are following our program. We want to be great role models. We want to show them what's possible and make sure that we're capturing their imaginations in the same way that we have for young boys for generations. And we think that will ultimately yield just incredible results for our program on both sides of the ledger, both our men's and women's teams.
Yeah, Josh, you talked about a little bit about recruiting, obviously, with Shauna and the most recent news coming out of that program. The other side of that is the transfer portal. It's something we've seen great evolution with over the last couple of years here. Do you think that that's something that will continue to evolve? What is the long-term viability of kind of this ever-changing transfer portal, and how do you see that playing out? It might be an unfair question, as I think that time will tell, but what are your thoughts around that?
I think the transfer portal is here to stay. Just to give a little bit of historical context, that when the NCAA rules were first created, there was a blanket requirement that upon transfer, a student athlete had to sit what was called a year in residence at their new institution before they were eligible to compete in college athletics. And the basis was sound. The idea was to give the students a chance to get settled in their new environment, to get their feet under them, to get acclimated to the new place, get settled in academically. But what happened is over time, the NCAA passed exceptions to that rule in dozens and dozens of sports. And so ultimately, what people don't realize is that there has been a transfer portal, albeit by a different name, in almost every sport that we have for years and years. And ultimately, what resulted was we had an environment where only 5 sports remained on the original rule, still requiring the year in residence. Those 5 sports, you could probably guess at least a handful of them: football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, and hockey. And it became really difficult for us to justify why we were treating those 5 sports differently than we were the other sports, call it 25 or 30 other sports that were and have been able to transfer repeatedly to a new school. And so the decision was made to create a single rule. And although I think some of us would have liked to go back to the original rule, the sense was that the train had left the station for too long with the other sports, that we couldn't take everybody back in time to that original concept. And so we put everybody on the more open environment, and the transfer portal was born. That, of course, has coincided with the introduction of NIL and has created a really interesting and in some ways challenging dynamic for college sports. What I do think is likely to happen is continued restriction around the portal. And so there are transfer windows. There's a proposal that's being considered by the Division I Council, which I happen to chair, that would reduce that window from what has been 45 days to 30 days. Looks at when the window occurs, when the student athletes can actually raise their hand and enter into that window. And I think the other thing, and at some point we'll probably talk about the House settlement, but as student athletes begin to be compensated more directly by the institutions, I anticipate that will start to level out the number of transfers for two reasons. One, I think it's going to be hard for other places to offer similar compensation. And secondly, there may become some contractual limitations on their ability to move. And certainly they can go and pursue a degree anywhere they like, but in terms of their opportunity to go to another institution and compete in athletics, that mobility may become more restricted because of some of the compensation agreements that will accompany this new paradigm that will take effect in the fall of 2025.
Absolutely. So, we're coming up on a celebratory year. We've talked about, obviously the history of a lot of things tonight, but we're celebrating 100 years of Memorial Stadium this year, which is, I think, a really cool thing to be a part of. I've been a part of this university for a number of years now. You don't get the honor of being a part of a historic year like 100th year very often. Can you talk about some of the things you all have planned for that, to kind of honor that year and to really help celebrate, obviously, this milestone anniversary?
Yeah, thanks for teeing that up. As you might expect with my history, Memorial Stadium is a very special place for me, and I know it is for many of you. It really is one of the most historic, beautiful stadiums in college football, and I haven't seen them all, but I've seen a lot of them, and there aren't a lot that rival Memorial Stadium in terms of its history, its significance, and really its construction, and so it's really exciting for all of us to be involved in celebrating that building and all that it has meant, not only to the University of Illinois, but to college football and college athletics more broadly. So we've been planning for this celebration for many years. Cassie Arner, who leads up our fan experience, that group that I mentioned earlier, and does great work with that, has taken the lead on our planning effort. And a lot of that is season long. Some of that, of course, will be tied specifically to the Michigan game where we'll rededicate the stadium. But you'll start to see some of that. You already have. If you were at the game, we have a beautiful logo that we've developed to celebrate the season. That's on the field in several locations. Our guys are wearing it in a sticker on their helmets. There are commemorative cups that will be different at each game, and so we encourage fans to buy those and collect the full set of those cups from our concession stands. We will introduce a series of throwback helmets. So starting this weekend against Kansas, you'll see our guys come out and wear actually the helmet that I wore. So the white underlined Illinois, so sort of the mid 90s to mid 2000s era helmet. You'll see another helmet from the Dick Butkus era with the stars and the numbers on the sides of the helmet that'll be worn for a different game. You'll see the curved Illini that was used during the early to mid 1980s. And so we're trying to capture some of that history. We have a museum, a pop-up museum that we built in the Great West Hall of Memorial Stadium. It's a room that our fans can go through and see some memorabilia and some photographs that really recognize the history of the stadium, some of the most meaningful events that the stadium has experienced. We have a replica Grange locker in the East Hall that our fans can visit that has some era-specific merchandise, things that were in vogue at the time that Red Grange was playing. And then, of course, the culmination for us is the Michigan game. So the dedication game of the stadium was played on October 18th, 1924 against the University of Michigan. We did the best we could. We're going to play the 100th anniversary of that game on October 19th, 2024 against the University of Michigan. We will wear 1924 throwback uniforms. I hope some of you have seen those on social media. We have beautiful hand-painted helmets that look like the old leather helmets that the guys were wearing back then. We will do a rededication gala that Friday night before the game, where we will officially rededicate the stadium and honor that history. And we've got a lot of things that we're doing with our video board, with some of our in-game production. So there's a lot around the building, and we've seen there were a lot of stadiums being built about that same time. We've had a chance to learn from what some other places have done, but as is our custom here, we've tried to get the benefit of their work, but also look for ways to elevate it and put our Illinois touch on it. And I think you'll see that over the course of this football season.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we're certainly obviously celebrating the history of 100 years of Memorial. We've had a lot of enhancements to athletic facilities under your tenure. We did have a couple of questions come in. Are there any other pieces in the pipeline? I know you're always thinking about enhancements. That's something that, you've been very passionate about, and it's been one of your core pieces, I know, since you've gotten here. Any future plans for that at this moment in time?
Memorial Stadium is a big focus for us. We have somewhat quietly invested about $10 million into Memorial Stadium over the last 3 years. Our fans who sit on the east and the south hopefully will experience the benefits of some of those investments. We've polished the concrete floors. We've replaced televisions. We've replaced every bathroom in the building. We've increased our points of sale. We've replaced lights. We've painted the steel infrastructure across the ceiling. We've done a lot of work. We've opened up the windows on the east side to return some natural light to that portion of the stadium. We built a broader concourse in the South Horseshoe. And so we'll continue that work in the years ahead. We're looking to try and replace the video board here in the next several years. It's about 12 years in, which is approaching the end of its useful life. We think we can do some things with today's technology that will even further advance the fan experience. We really need to get Wi-Fi into that building for a lot of different reasons. The most important one being that's an expectation of today's fans, and we want them to have that opportunity. And so that's a much more costly experience than many people might realize. We need to improve the sound and the lights in the stadium. And so we've got a lot there that we're going to continue to tweak and improve upon. Beyond Memorial Stadium, I think the next area of focus for us will probably be Huff Hall. We've explored a lot of different opportunities to try and put volleyball in a stronger position from a facilities perspective, and for a variety of different reasons, none of those has been able to cross the finish line. And so we're now really committed to seeing Huff flourish. There's some great examples out there across the country. Penn State has done a fantastic job of breathing new life into their historic volleyball gymnasium. A couple of years ago, we were in the Sweet 16. I had the chance to travel down to Austin, Texas, and see us play down there, and to see the facility down there for the Longhorns. Again, an old gym that they've really put a lot of TLC into and made it a fantastic environment. And so we're anticipating a similar undertaking around Huff Hall here in the years to come, and look forward to that being such an important building for us, just with the history of our basketball program, of course, but more recently volleyball. And so we'd like to try and find a way to honor that history and maintain that as the home of Fighting Illini volleyball.
That's great, Josh, and look forward to all of those pieces. I think the new facilities around campus are just top of the line and state of the art. So it'll be fantastic to see what comes with the new pieces as well, or the enhancements as well. I want to circle back just quickly on something you mentioned earlier. We've received a couple of questions on this, but you mentioned the house settlement a little while ago, and that came up through another question. Just wanted to see if you could maybe speak to that a little bit more. Maybe get some of your insight on that a little bit.
Yeah, so the house settlement, and you talk about things I could talk an hour on. This is probably at the top of that list. This is probably the thing that I'm spending the most time on here, and have been for probably the last 6 months. If you think about, there's a lot of litigation happening around college athletics right now. You can group it into two broad buckets. One is employment, and so there are a number of different pieces of litigation that have been filed claiming that student athletes should be recognized as employees under various laws. This settlement that I'm going to talk about has nothing to do with that. And so all the employment cases are still out there, still pending. The second bucket is antitrust. And as some of you probably understand, antitrust essentially tries to create pro-competitive environments for different businesses. And here the topic is really the competition for student athlete talent. And there have been three major antitrust lawsuits that are pending in the Northern District of California, which has become the go-to destination for plaintiffs seeking antitrust relief against the NCAA or our member conferences. And so there is a pending settlement of those three cases that will have really profound implications for the future of college athletics. The pieces that will change that would be most meaningful to the folks listening. Number one, you mentioned scholarships. The NCAA for years has had rules that limit the number of scholarships we can provide to our student athletes. I think people understand why that could be anti-competitive. This idea that, well, we have more money to give, but we're being limited by the rules and how much of that we can provide to our students. The new rule sets roster limits, not scholarship limits. And so instead of in baseball having 11.7 scholarships, which is what the rule has been, we now will say, well, the baseball team can have no more than 34 players, but you can do as much or as little in the scholarship space for those 34 players as you like. So that's a big change, and that's coming in the fall of 25. The other really significant change from the House settlement will be the opportunity for the first time for schools like Illinois to have the ability, not the requirement, but the ability to directly share revenue with our student athletes up to a negotiated cap. That cap will be the same for all schools, and it is 22% of a set of identified revenues. And so at Illinois, that will amount to about $22 or $23 million starting in the first year and growing in the years after that we can distribute out to our student athletes for the first time. And so there are two challenges with that. One, we don't have $23 million. And so we're spending a lot of time trying to identify where those resources are going to come from. We believe that our level, at the Big Ten level, there is an expectation that we will fully fund those $23 million to our student athletes. It's not required by the rule, but to compete at our level, that will become the expectation. And so we're working aggressively to try and find those monies that we can share with our student athletes. And then secondly is once you have the money, developing a strong plan for how to distribute that money, which sports are going to receive that money, which student athletes. And it will, again, give us an opportunity to compete in a way that we haven't been able to historically. And that, I think, is something that we should all be really excited about. The House will bring a lot of change, but I think the opportunity to provide additional financial resources to our student athletes is overdue. And I am really supportive of the changes that are coming. And just because change is coming doesn't mean it's wrong. And just because it's going to be hard for us to implement doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It will be challenging, but I think also incredibly rewarding. And hopefully, once we get through to the other side, we will have a reshaped college athletics environment that is more sustainable for the next 50 years than what we've had for the last, call it 10 years.
Great. Thanks, Josh, for that information. I think it's extremely valuable and something that, you can read a lot about, but to get it right from you, I think is vitally important. We're coming up on the hour here. I want to end on what I hope is a little bit of a lighter question. What does game day look like for you? Do you have, you obviously were a player, do you have any traditions or rituals on game day? Are you a superstitious kind of guy, or what is a game day at Illinois? And I'll say football game day, I guess, for the season right now.
It's a great question. Every day is a little bit different, just because of the different times that the kickoffs can happen. A tradition that we started when I first got here was our game day run club. And so I was always running on game days anyway. And I thought, well, geez, what if people might want to come out and do this with me? So I started putting out invitations on Twitter, and now we routinely get dozens of people to come out and run with me, 7 o'clock Saturday morning. For anybody who's interested in joining, we go about 4 miles. We don't have any particular pace, and we eat donuts at the end. And so it combines two of my favorite things into one experience. But that's been a nice tradition that has developed. We've now done it literally every home game and some road games, bowl games, in addition to that. So my days start with that. Depending on the kick time, if it's an early kick, an 11 a.m. kick, I'll come straight here to the office. I'll shower, I'll get cleaned up, and then head straight out into the mess, out into the tailgating lots, and try and visit with people, see some folks. We have a list of people who are there that I want to try and see. Sometimes we'll have meetings set up here in my office. Sometimes we'll have it arranged for me to go stop by somebody's tailgate. I'll usually try and be at the Illini walk there that happens just over 2 hours before kickoff. It's a great way for me to greet the team and wish them luck. And there's just an energy to that particular part of the game day tradition that I really enjoy. I try and I'll make it over to the stadium club tent when we have a lot of donors and people who are supportive of the program. And again, walk that tent, say hello to people. And then ultimately I try and get into the stadium and down on the field by about an hour before kickoff. We again have people who will come down to the field, guests, and so it's a great chance for me I'll meet with some recruits. I'll talk to people from the media. I'll see a lot of alumni, former players, donors, corporate sponsors. There's a lot of traffic on the sidelines during pregame warmups, and it's a great chance for me to connect with people and say hello. And then as the game gets closer, obviously things get a little more serious. And so by the time the marching band is finished and we get into the pregame introductions, then I'm pretty dialed in. I usually stay on the field through kickoff, and then at some point in the first quarter, usually the first or second commercial timeout, I'll head upstairs. I'll usually try and find my family and check in with them for a little bit, and then head up to the athletic director's suite where we have guests and say hello to those folks. To try and be there for most of the second quarter and a good part of halftime, and then occasionally we'll know who's in the building in other places. If there's folks in other suites or other clubs, then we'll try and get me connected to them so I can say hello and visit a little bit. But usually by the end of halftime, midpoint of the third quarter, I try and be someplace where I can actually sit and really focus on the game and see the last 2 quarters, especially like this weekend. If it's a huge game, a competitive game, I want to be able to watch as much of it as I can. And then I always get down to the field with 5 or 6 minutes left in the game. I always want to be down there at the conclusion, win or lose, to greet our guys as they come off the field. And hopefully it's a celebration and a lot of hugs. If it didn't go our way, then I never want to be absent in the hard moments. I think that's an important part of how I've tried to approach leadership. And so want to be there for our guys either way. And then head up into the locker room, be there for the post-game conversation between coach and the team. And then we'll attend the post-game press conference and then kind of wrap up my day usually with a short or long conversation, depending on how the game went, with Coach Bielema. Just the two of us will visit for a few minutes, like I said, or a lot of minutes, depending on how we're both feeling. And usually the shorter the conversation, the better the game went. And then I try and head out after that. So it can be a pretty long day, but there's only 7 home games a year, and obviously critical experience for our fans and ultimately for the success of our program. And so really proud to be a part of it.
Josh, again, we're getting to the hour here. I will say a few of my fondest memories in my time here at Illinois have been the big handshake, the big hug you've had with Coach Bielema or Coach Underwood after a big win. So we'll certainly hope for another one of those this weekend. Thank you again for your time. I know it's a very busy fall. We're coming up on a huge game here Saturday and a homecoming week ahead. But really, really great conversation. Appreciate you joining us. appreciate everybody that tuned in this evening for our University of Illinois Speaker Series. We can't thank you enough for being a part of Illinois, part of the Alumni Association. We have our next Speaker Series event taking place on October 24th. That will be a conversation titled Resolutions of Very Close Presidential Elections. And that'll be presented by Brian Gaines, who's with our political science department here at Illinois. And we think it'll obviously be a very timely topic as we head into November as well. So again, we hope you can join us there. Hope you check out all things Alumni Association at UIAA.org. Hope you have a wonderful evening. We hope to see you at Memorial Stadium this weekend. Thank you all again and take care. Go Illini.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your support. Look forward to seeing you.